What's up, guys? This is While Supplies Last, the marketing podcast.
Where we talk about all things business and marketing. My name is Laura.
And I'm Gabby. And today we have Edward Leos with us. He is a business and leadership coach, and he also owns the Hotel Guide travel magazine, and he's been operating it for 30 years.
Yep.
Yeah.
30 years, man, it seems like just yesterday when we started. And in fact, I was just finishing up our summer edition right now. So that'll be out later today. So kind of a cool segue, talking a little bit about business and leadership and in travel and all that stuff too. So I'm excited about that. Excited to be here too.
Yeah,
Nice.
this is really cool.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you and hear what all you have to say.
So we're talking today about leadership, business, everything like that. You want to start with us?
Yeah, of course. So John C. Maxwell once said, "A leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way." What would you say the qualities of a good leader are, and how do they lead effectively?
Yeah, it's interesting you brought up Maxwell. I'm actually a John Maxwell leadership coach, and I got to meet him several times in person and be able to kind of really hear his heart and stuff like that too. So it was rather interesting because a lot of his stuff aligned with my personal philosophies. Being an entrepreneur for 30 years, you kind of see the ups and downs, and you see how things really are and try to adapt. And sometimes I remember when I was getting going in the business 30 years ago, I didn't really have mentors and I didn't really have those kind of things like what I look at now where, you could lean on a podcast, you could lean on social media. Whereas before I was like, wow, what do I do? Trying to be an entrepreneur when you're 25 years old, and you have a nationally distributed travel magazine was a hard thing to do. And so when you're talking about leadership and stuff like that with the Maxwell principles, it really is about, in my opinion, it's really about being good communication, I think is rather important. I think the word servant leadership is something that's popped up a lot more nowadays, but I really believe in that. I think back in the old days for me, leadership really was by title. Like if you were the boss, if you're the CEO or you're the general manager, then you said whatever you wanted to say and you did it. The employees were supposed to do it. That's kind of not how it is now. You'll have people who will just quit on you or leave. And now I look at the servant leadership side of things and I really see how it's transformed business, transformed culture, but it's also transformed lives. And so years ago, I really changed my philosophy to more of a servant leadership, which was, hey, how can I help you? And I look at that from our team's perspective too. Anyone who's ever worked with me, that's the philosophy that I have with my team, and I expect them to have the same thing moving forward with any of our customers or partners and stuff like that.
Yeah. I think for me, I've heard more that, so that management and leaders managers and leaders have been like interchangeably used, but they can mean totally different things. Like you can be a manager, but you can't be a leader, Can you kind of talk about that difference there?
It's kind of interesting because there's a lot of people that, like I said, going back to the titles, people are thinking, oh, now I'm vice president of sales and marketing. Maybe you were the top salesperson and you just kept ranking up. And then you get to be VP of sales and you're like, you're just not a really good leader. You're really good at sales and marketing, but leading people is a whole nother ballgame. And yet there's someone who doesn't have the title of vice president of sales and marketing, and you look to them and you'd see people on your team going to them and saying, hey, can I ask you for advice? That kind of stuff. And that when you eliminate the titles inside of things, you start seeing how people's actions really align with what a leader really is. Would I follow you? When you're a leader, it's would I follow you? Would I ask you for help? That kind of stuff. So, I really look at people nowadays when they defer to the title aspect or, like I'm a parent. So like the old days, it was like, because I said so when, your kids would ask you, wasn't the greatest answer. Now you look back on it, you really weren't probably supposed to say that. And so, but that's the time that I grew up in. That's how my parents treated me. So you just figure, hey, that's how it should be.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it kind of went into the business world. And nowadays you can't get away with that.
Yeah. You do still see it these days too. You'll see the because I said so kind of thing in managers, which feels a little a little much.
Well, it is. I mean, it's just not a good thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's something that people are seeing more and more because you don't have to be here. You don't have to work for that boss. And anyone nowadays could literally create a podcast from their home if they wanted to. And
Yeah.
it's like with my magazine, I have outsourced a lot of my stuff in my magazine. I still design it, but I compete with the big boys, and you wouldn't know that. I don't have the corporate headquarters of like a Texas Monthly or a Travel and Leisure or something like Condé Nast. But my magazine's award winning. It's still seen and that kind of stuff as well. So it really does matter that way.
So going back to like good leadership in business, it affects employees. So like which we talked about. How does it improve the workplace when there is good leadership?
It's just better. You want to be there. So I used to work for for someone, and what I like to aspire it to is I would run through a brick wall for her. So like if she had called me like at 2 a.m. for something, I would go do it. Like I would help. Like that was to me. She was the owner of the company. It was actually the River Cruisers. I was a voice of the Riverwalk for 5 years.
Oh,
And so that was a fun job.
yeah.
And so you're talking marketing, one of the top attractions, not only in the state of Texas, but in pretty much the world. And so, but I remember her, and her name was Joanne, and she was just fantastic. She was challenging. I mean, she challenged you, but I respected that. And I think from a leadership perspective, when you have a staff that understands where you stand and you communicate with that, I think people just want to know where they're going. Like if you lay out a plan and give people the opportunity to be part of that plan, it becomes a whole different thing. And it all comes down to being valued. I mean, we've all been around people who, you're talking to them and they're like looking away and not even really paying attention to you. And you're like, well, I don't really feel value just being in this space. And so it's really a big deal that I've learned over time. And it was trial and error because I've not always been the best when it comes to that. But really, when you're being valued, it's a whole nother level. And an employee becomes someone who wants to do it for you in addition to the company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. I've been in a workplace where I didn't feel valued, or I didn't feel like the business owners were doing what they needed to do for the employees and for the customers as well. And it slowly started to like tear on me. And I ended up leaving the job for other reasons also. But I understand the toll that it takes and the role that good leadership plays, like in a business especially.
It's really funny you mentioned that because I literally quit a job from one day to the next because of that.
Wow.
And I only had to work in the office 3 days out of the week. I got full benefits, full 401k, everything. I only had to do this for 3 days a week. I could not put myself through another day at that. And sometimes people are like, wait, you quit like a close to 6-figure job and this and that, and you had nowhere to, and I had my magazine, but it was more of a hobby at the time. And so I really didn't have anything. And so like I from one day to the next said, I can't do this. Yeah. And that's when you start realizing that, hey, life's too short. And what are your choices? And when you're young, like you guys, you start looking at life from a different lens. And so we were talking about this earlier, but mentors and partners and stuff like that, like I didn't really have those 30 years ago. And nowadays the opportunities are there to go. You literally could go ask someone like myself and go, hey, you've been in business for 30 years. Like, what would you do, this and that? And I would gladly share that with someone because you don't want them to do the same thing you did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that translates into leadership also of being able to. Sorry, I lost my thoughts.
Hey, it happens.
Yeah, but it does translate into leadership as well.
100%.
Yeah.
All right. So what would you say is your definition of leadership, and how has it changed over the years?
Well, my definition of leadership is just someone who, I like the Maxwell principle, knows the way and goes the way. But I also, there's just that intrinsic value that's in a good leader. It's one of those things where I feed off of energy. So I can come in a room and I can tell you who I want to be around, who I don't want to be around, just by the energy that person brings off. To me, a good leader is going to have positive energy. I just really believe that. They're going to have positive energy. They're going to have great communication skills. And I think they're going to be honest. because I think nowadays it's easy for people to sugarcoat and BS over things because they don't want to maybe deal with the stuff. Most of us are used to now texting instead of communicating. And so, you look at the generation now, I look at my girls who are just going to college and stuff like that. Like, your communication skills have probably dropped from when I was in school, which was years ago. But it's so important because, I mean, if you're in the workplace, it's not like you can communicate to someone like you would in a text message.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to have those tough conversations, or positive or negative. For instance, if you have a boss who's not really valuing you, or you want to get a raise or something like that, like, how are you going to communicate that with your boss? And so there's different life lessons that kind of come out of it. But I think definitely communication is important. I look at servant leadership is up there as well. And I think it goes back to just treating someone the way you would want to be treated. I mean, that's as basic as it can possibly be. If you want, you don't want to be treated like second class citizens, so why would you treat someone else like that?
I think you mentioning communication is really important. I am a strong, strong, strong advocate for communication. I feel like friendships, relationships, business relationships, anything like that needs to have solid communication for things to work. Because if you don't, that's when misunderstandings happen. And then in personal life or professional life is when all the problems come. Because someone said something, or I heard that wrong and stuff like that. So communication is definitely important.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I think communication is at the top of everything. When you're dealing with people, so human beings are not meant to be in silos. We're not meant to be solo people. We're meant to be around you. I mean, look at where we are now. We're doing a podcast, and it's all of us doing this together. We work in an office that has the co-sharing abilities, but it's really about the community. When you're around community, you take other people's values, other people's systems, and you figure out, man, what can I learn from you guys that maybe I can incorporate? And so it makes life a lot different, because back in my day, it was, hey, how can I get to the top? Now I'm like, how can I get to the top? But who am I bringing with me? And so it's a whole different perspective. That's the sign of a true leader is, I don't want to be the fastest one at the top and just being at the top of the mountain going, man, it's a cool view. I really wish someone else was here with me. No, I want people to be up there with me. And, you build the ladder and you kind of bring people up that ladder too.
Yeah, that's definitely the leader mindset.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. So we talked about some skills like communication. What other skills are most often in a leadership role?
Well, I think you got to be decisive. I mean, I really do. I think in a leader, you can't be wishy-washy. And I think nowadays it's easy to get that way. But I think you've got to have a decisive backbone. You have to have a little bit of a spine. I think you have to be able to tackle some of the tough conversations. But that, again, goes back to communication. If you're a good communicator, it's going to be cool. If you're a great communicator, I just think you're going to be even better with it. So you can never go wrong with improving your communication, whether that's like a Toastmasters thing or whether that's just, reading more and stuff like that. So I'm a big fan of reading. I know we'll probably get to some of those topics as well, but reading is really important, and it's one of those things where people just kind of don't do anymore. But communication matters big time. I really think having a heart for people. I think that's important for leadership.
Yeah. I, as a student, sorry, Gabby.
No, you're good.
I, as a student, have experienced professors who I can tell are great leaders. I had one professor, and she was really, really tough. It was a tough professor, and everyone was like, she's really hard and like strict. But at the end of the day, she cared and she was fair. Like, she cared about the students and she was fair. If she did something wrong, she knew, she owned up, she said, I apologize, And I think that really shows in a leader compared to one that's like, well, y'all got it wrong, so that sucks for you, So, yeah.
No, but I mean, it's right. I mean, you're true. I mean, really being that difference maker. It's okay to have a hard assignment, right? And if you have someone to help teach you that way, like whether it's right or wrong, but that person is invested in you. So it's okay to be tough and be a great leader.
Yeah.
It's okay. And people think, oh, great leaders got to be like all soft and, rainbows. And no, that's not how it's going to be.
Yeah.
Everything's not going to be perfect, particularly in business. You guys know that. You have, marketing business. So it's ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you've got to be able to handle the valleys as well as with the peaks. It's not like, every day's rock star kind of stuff. It's like sometimes you're like, what are we going to do now?
Yeah. I mean, her being tough was definitely good. It
Mhm.
was good. It made me grow as a person. And now I can write a paper really, really good. And I know to bring my textbook because that's the only class I ever got kicked out for not bringing my textbook.
Right. But it's the little things.
Yeah.
And so, that goes back to expectations.
Mhm.
And one of the things when it comes to a leader is really when you have those opportunities to communicate on the front end,
Mhm.
there's always less stress on the back end. So I'm a big believer as a leader is how can I eliminate hurdles in
Mhm.
everything that I do? And so if I go communicate to the two of you, hey, this is what we're going to do today, boom, 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 your expectations are now, hey, Edward said we're going to do this, this, and this.
Mhm.
It's not like, hey, we're here at the office and you guys are like, whoa, what's going on today?
Yeah.
People are just, whether you're a little kid or whether you're a grown adult, people want to know where they're going. That goes back to being valued.
Mm-hmm.
I think that goes also to communication, being able to, if you don't know, ask, be able to have that open door policy and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really good and a good thing for leaders.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Right. Do you have any resources that you would recommend for people that would want to become a better leader?
Man, there's so many resources out there now. And like I talked about, we touched on that earlier when I was, first getting started. So I started the Hotel Guide. It was my first job out of college 30 years ago. So I started out as an account executive, didn't have any contacts, nothing. And when I was 25, the owner sold me the magazine. And so I was a 25-year-old publisher of a nationally distributed magazine. I have a BA in communication arts, journalism is my background. And I was like, oh, this is cool. It's running a magazine. Well, there is a difference between being the great salesperson, because I was making a lot of money in sales, to running a business with 10 employees. And it was a big challenge. And so I didn't even know where to first go. Like, where do my resources, like, who do I ask for help? It was like I had to figure this out on the fly. And was it hard? Yeah. I mean, there was some dark times. For me to say that the magazine's still around 30 years later is a testament to, like, I guess a little bit of my grit, if you will, and probably my tenacity when it comes. I'm a Taurus, so like I don't. Yeah, I'm pretty hard-headed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I get that vibe.
But I also want to be successful, and so one of the big things is about if it's my name's on it, then I'm going to do the best I obviously can. And so going back to that, I really wish I had those opportunities. So nowadays I look at, there's podcasts galore. Like there's times where I'll wake up in the morning and one of the things that I do is I'll put on YouTube and it'll just be like some motivational, inspirational thing flowing or something faith-driven. And it's got in the background. And then when I worked out of the house, I did the same thing. There'll be those times where you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Listen to this and that. So I would do that. That's one thing. I think the podcasts are huge nowadays. You can find anything, whether you're a women-owned business. There's entrepreneurs out. There's Mel Robbins, just fantastic. There's Tony Robbins. There's everybody that has those things. John Maxwell has his podcast. Even I have a podcast that I've done from a leadership standpoint. And you look at people who are like, wow, you really, what kind of voice can you have? I did a podcast, leadership podcast, every Sunday for 2 years in a row. Every Sunday, 8 o'clock. I did it on Super Bowl. I did it on Easter. I did it on my birthday. I did it on Christmas. I did it on New Year. I did it no matter what. And I was like, there would be times where I felt like I was just talking to myself on this Facebook Live. And I met a guy. He was we were at an event for a company that I was aligned with. And we had a break in between sessions. And he came up to me. He's like, hey, I just want you to know I was going through a very dark time. And your podcast, one of your podcasts helped save me. And he's like, don't ever stop because you never know who's listening. And obviously, there's two grown men crying. And I'm just like, oh my God. And it was just like, but it was important because it goes back to everything that we're doing here. It's everything that each one of you are doing is we all have the opportunity to impact this world. Everybody has a voice. How are you going to use it? And so I think from that perspective, there's so many opportunities out there for us to learn from other podcasts. Reading, I'm a big fan of that. So books, I don't care if it's reading or if it's audiobooks, but what you put in is what you're going to get out. And one of the big John Maxwell principles is there's no status quo. You're either progressing or regressing. You can't say, "Oh yeah, I'm cool where I am." No, that just means you're regressing.
Mhm.
If you're not getting better every day, you're regressing. And so I think that's important for people to understand too.
Yeah, I do like that. If you're not growing, you're regressing.
There's it's life's about action.
Yeah.
And if you're standing still, you're not standing still.
Mhm.
You're actually regressing. Because imagine if you were sitting in our chair for 24 hours straight, and then you try and get up and go run 3 miles. Well, you're not going to be able to do that as effectively as if you'd been moving
Yeah.
throughout the day.
Mhm.
And so people don't understand that. They're like, yeah, I'm cool where I'm at. No, you're actually not. You're actually going backwards.
Yeah.
And people need to understand that. It doesn't matter what amount you do. I mean,
Mhm.
it could be like, hey, 10 minutes, I listened to a podcast for 10 minutes today. Well, that's 10 minutes more than what I did the day before.
Yeah.
And I learned something new.
Yeah, I think having that growth mindset is something I've learned as being early in my career. I'm still a student right now. I graduate soon. But
Congrats.
yeah, thank you. But I think having that growth mindset is something I had to learn before this. So I am a marketing major, obviously. But before that, I was actually in nursing. So
Nice.
I wasn't in business. I didn't have that. I didn't have to think about any of that.
Mhm.
And when I entered the business world, it was a big shift that I really liked. I really enjoyed having my brain working that way. Obviously, now I love business and I like what I'm doing. I wasn't happy in nursing for obvious reasons, but now I am able to flex that muscle of like I want to grow. I felt like I couldn't do that in my past career choice,
Mhm.
and business has really given me that opportunity. Um, I'm actually also in a leadership honor society, and they've talked about that a lot too, was the growth mindset. So I think it's
Yeah.
really great.
No, I mean, it's important. And there's
Yeah.
a lot of people that talk about, hey, I've got goals, right?
Mhm.
And so Maxwell's a very big believer in not goal mindset, but growth mindset.
Mm.
Because if you're always getting better, you're going to reach your goals.
Mm.
But there's been a lot of times, and we've all had goals, whether it's like, oh, hey, I want to lose this amount of weight. And you hit the weight and you're like, now what?
Yeah.
You know, there's many times where we've achieved something and then it's like, now what? I remember when I was running marathons. I mean, I still do, but at the very beginning, I was competitive with myself.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, I'm going to run faster than the last time. I would train hard. And then I did it. And I'm like, yeah, now what? Like,
Yeah.
nobody really cares. I mean, they care. Your family and friends care that you ran a marathon and this and that. But it's not like you're winning the marathon. And so you start thinking things from a different perspective. But it's like, how are you going to continue to grow?
Mm.
That's the key. That's the secret sauce to being successful in life. And if you can do that, you know, one of Maxwell's principles too is like, I mean, if you throw a pebble in the river, it's going to start having that ripple effect. So one of the big takeaways that I would like to get you in the audience is be a river, not a reservoir. And that's exactly what Maxwell says. And what people say is like a lot of times people come in that mindset like I'm gonna learn everything. I'm gonna keep it to myself because I want the answer. It's like
Yeah.
you just want to keep the answers. Whereas like I want to share it with you, share it with everyone here because then now we're working as a team and letting it out. And one of the greatest things that you guys know is like if you take something I say and you go say it to someone else, for one, you're gonna remember what I said, and number two, you become the teacher to everybody else. And so it becomes a whole different level. And that becomes leadership. Leadership not by title, but leadership by action.
Mhm.
I know you mentioned servant leadership. I've heard that quite a bit.
Mhm.
Can you kind of define it a little bit more?
Well, it kind of goes back to just treating people the way that
Mhm.
you want to be treated.
Mm-hmm.
But it's putting other people first.
Yeah.
I mean, it's putting the team first. It's like that book, Great Leaders Eat Last. And, I think that's a Simon Sinek book, I think it is. But I mean, it's really important when you start putting the other people first. Now you are all here going, man, I really want to do something for this guy. I want our team to be successful. I want this company to be successful. And it becomes, I'm a very big believer in there's ownership mindset and employee mindset. There's a lot of people in this world that live off of employee mindset. I want my 8 to 5, I want my paycheck, and I don't really care if this company makes money or not. I just want this. The ownership mindset is like, I'm going to go out of my way and do whatever I can. It'd be like me, in the office now, if there was trash on the floor, is it my job to pick it up as a tenant? No. Would I pick it up? Yes, that's ownership mindset. The ownership mindset is going the extra way that's not in your job description and doing it because this is how you would do it. So whenever I coach people, I say the same thing. You have to have that ownership mindset in everything you do, because otherwise you're have a cop out for everything else. You're like, well, that's not my job. And that's how a lot of people who aren't successful are, and they have that closed mindedness. And when you have that openness, it's just a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, that's great. Do you have any questions? Have you ever experienced a servant leader, Gabby?
Matt,
Oh,
really.
yeah.
I can see that.
Honestly, I would say Matt's the best person that I've worked for
He's
thus far.
our visionary.
Yes, he's
just
the-
for the audience.
The chief visionary officer.
Yes.
Yes.
Anytime we talk to him, like, hey, we need this, or we think like something would work better, like if we do it this way, he listens and he takes like our advice like to heart, and he usually goes out and does it right away. So it's not like he's never like, oh, what I say goes, like, or I'm always right. It's always very like team oriented, and he likes a lot of like feedback from the team in
Yeah.
order to like make processes go well
Sure.
or just better the business.
How does that make y'all feel?
Oh, it makes me feel great. I actually want to get up and come to work. Like, I love my job.
You see, there's a different level of communication there. So, like, not to get too deep, and I know some of it's on camera, some of it's not, but I'm in the room with you, and your body language completely shifted. Like the moment you started talking about Matt and started talking about your not even a job, but where you work, your whole body language shifted. This is why I like doing coaching one-on-one, because body language doesn't lie. You know, what you say can be one thing, but what I see is a complete different thing. Your shoulders went down. You lifted up. Your voice was a little bit more confident. You smiled when you were talking about your job, and that's where people understand that, hey, it's the real deal. So you see, like one little thing, not one little thing. I mean, Matt's a fantastic guy, but just doing what he's doing is impacting you two in a way that now you're like, well, this is how it should be. Like, if I open up my own firm and this is what I want to do, I want to treat it like that.
Yeah, I definitely I feel appreciated. And I think me and Gabby have both come from retail before this. I worked for a big corporation where it sometimes didn't feel like that. There was a point before COVID that it felt like there was some appreciation, but after that, they were just trying to survive.
Oh, sure.
So it definitely went away and dissipated, and that's why I left that job. I didn't feel like, I just felt like I was just walking in and leaving, and that's it. I was just there.
It was a paycheck.
Yeah, just blacking out the rest of my shift and then leaving. Yeah,
Which is the worst feeling.
Yeah.
I mean, have had jobs like that, and it's just not fun. I mean, none of us are guaranteed tomorrow. Shit, none of us are guaranteed this afternoon.
Yeah.
And so, I think even when you're young, you're like, oh man, I got all this time. And I literally just posted a picture that I found that I think I was 5 years old, and I had my baseball bat, and baseball was my first love. And so, but I posted the picture, then I put a comment on it saying like, man, a lot of life has happened from that 5-year-old to 52 years now, but there's so much more to do. And so it's all your perspective and how you're doing it. And so I think it's important that we recognize those things, but you guys are in such a fantastic position now to, if you're willing to learn, everything is there. And I think that's one of the biggest things for you and for your audience is to understand is like, man, there are zero excuses. There are zero excuses for you to be successful. Zero. It's all on you. And that's a Maxwell principle right there. It's a law of the mirror. If you look at yourself in the mirror, what you see, I can lie to both of you. You can lie to me that my life's fantastic. I'm doing great. But when you're brushing your teeth and you're combing your hair and looking in the mirror, like, and you see, you're like, are you happy with what you're seeing? You can't BS yourself. Like if you really look, you could be like, man, it's fantastic. I'm doing great. I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Or it's gonna be like, man, this not right. Edward, you gotta turn some stuff around.
Yeah.
So it's the law of the mirror, and it's a big principle of his.
Yeah, I think technology, internet, given us so many resources to use. I know we've done like courses, like Gabby, we did that one course, and she, after we finished the course, she was like, oh, it's so cool that they have these, like, they have Google animals, and
Oh,
she's
yeah.
really interested in like growing and knowing. You had really fun with that
Our
course.
SEO course. Sometimes people will ask me what I do, and I start talking about search engine optimization. They're like, yeah, as soon as you start talking about your job, you get super excited. And sometimes I just think like, man, I'm such a nerd. I get excited talking about search engine optimization.
You like to learn about it. It's good.
Yeah.
Well, it's important. I mean, you got to be excited about what you're doing. So, I mean, if I want to leave y'all with that, and anyone who's listening to this, you got to have a passion. You have a fire for what you're doing. If you don't like it, if you could do what you do and not get paid, then you're in the right place.
Mm-hmm.
If you have to be paid to do what you're doing, you're in the wrong place.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you got to find whatever makes your heart go crazy.
Yeah.
Right now, for me, and I think I said this when I was speaking last week, if I had a choice between $10,000 or speaking in front of 10,000 people, give me the 10,000 people. Because I'm at a point in my life where I want to impact as many people in this world, and I'm about legacy.
Yeah.
So that's a big one of my passions is how can I impact people on a daily basis? This podcast is one of them. Being able to talk to you and see you guys on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. I know I've had conversations with Gabby, and we're just, we're drinking coffee talking about marketing, and she's asking me about something, and I'm just like flowing with the, I don't want to use the word wisdom because I don't want to make me sound like some old dude.
It is wisdom, though.
It is.
But I'm like, why would I send Gabby down this road when I'm like, no, don't come down that road,
Yeah,
and
give
so
her some advice.
I don't want to see you guys crash and burn, and they're like, aha, I did that too.
No.
Why would we want to do that? And so that's a sign of a good leader too,
Yeah.
Is be able to read the signs, read the people, and see where you can really input your expertise and help, and do it in a nice way, do it in a positive way, not, hey, this is the only way to do it and how I had made it happen. So yeah, I think it's important.
Yeah. Do you have any leaders? I know you mentioned some names before that you really look up to, and like kind of describe who they are, just because I don't know a lot of people right now, so I'm just trying to learn and see.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I've had some people in the hospitality industry that I've looked up to. Joanne Boone, who actually used to own the Rio San Antonio Cruises, the boats on the Riverwalk.
Mm-hmm.
So I really looked up to her because she was female,
Mm-hmm.
Hispanic, and she owned the company that was like one of the top tourist attractions in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember people would come up to me, and they're like, particularly women, and they would come up to me and be like, how do you work for her? She's like so mean, so ruthless. And I'm like, if you're not mean, she's not rude. Mm-hmm. If you're in the inner circle, you understand that she's a driver.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand too that females have to be a certain level at times.
Mm-hmm.
I have 2 daughters, both in college, and I want them to crash any kind of ceiling. I want them to create their own businesses if they have to. I'm of that mindset. And so it's really important. She was one of my, I guess, people that I really looked up to, but she also helped in a lot of ways. But then there's other people too, like you're talking about John, being able to meet John Maxwell and hang out with him, like actually probably about 3 different times. It was in a health and wellness company that I'm aligned with. So being one of the top leaders in that company, we got to hang out with John Maxwell, and that really got me the opportunity to be like, I think I was in a room of like 50 people with him. And so you're talking about someone who's like internationally known. You go to Barnes and Noble, you'll see a whole book, all these books of John Maxwell. So I look up to him. Tony Robbins is someone that I admire too. I did the fire walk experience. I actually walked on fire with Tony Robbins. So it goes back to like you can really do anything if your mind you put it to. So those are 2 people that I really kind of admire. And maybe I don't know them personally,
Yeah.
but you still can be connected with everything that's out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Any last thoughts?
See. I'm very much a listen and ask questions like the next day type person. I need to be better.
Let it marinate in there.
Yes. Anytime we have a guest, I'm always like listening so intently and like mentally taking notes like, yeah, this is good. I need to remember this for later.
See, I'm the one that's like, oh, that was good. Ask a question about that. like right away. But then I lose track of it.
I mean, everything's different. I mean, it's all good. I mean, like I said, hopefully this isn't the last time. Like I said, I think from a leadership perspective, it's important. If you're going to have some takeaways from this, it's really about growth. It's really about good communication. It's really about being a servant leadership and adding value to people. Life's not hard, but it's us who make it hard. And so there's people who, and we talked about this last week in my speech, is be grateful. Practice an attitude of gratitude. Actually, if you just do that in everything you do, life's going to be way better. Even the fact that you get to work, the fact that you get to go work out, the fact that you get to do whatever, the things that people like, I hate this, I don't want to go work out, or hey, I don't, man, you got 2 legs, go do what you can do. Like, I don't care what, like, there are people who are way, in more challenging situations. And when you start having an attitude of gratitude, your life changes in a different way. And also you start empowering, impacting other people. And that's the big difference. I guarantee you, you have never felt bad about helping someone else. It is physically impossible. Endorphins are actually released when you help someone else. It's scientifically proven. But you're obviously helping someone, so that's important.
I definitely want to try a gratitude journal. I've seen a lot of people do that. Like in the mornings, you like kind of sit down and I got to make time for it. And I want to practice that more in my personal life. So
I think it's important. And I think if you don't even have the journal, start with what I talked about last week. 3 things in the morning that you're thankful for. 3 things at night. When you're lying in bed, you're staring up at the ceiling before you go to bed. 3 things that you're thankful for that day. It's the last thing your mind thinks. The last thing that you're thinking in your mind. It's not like, oh my God, I've got to do this, this, and this. Did I pay this bill? Did I pay? No, it's what are you thankful for? Then before you even put your feet on the floor, when you wake up, same thing. What are 3 things that I'm thankful for? Whatever it is. It could be like, hey, I woke up. That's a massive one. Pretty much all of mine. But 3 things, now you get into a routine. So you got 3 things that you're bookending on both ends. And you got the opportunity to come in, your day starts in a different way and it ends on a different way.
Yeah. It's great. Just looking at Gabby.
Yeah.
We're all checking out Gabby.
I'm sorry, guys. But no, that's really good. I'm going to remember, though, be a river, not a reservoir. And Edward is definitely a river. So like he was mentioning before, I came out to get coffee one day and, hey, what's up? How's your day going? Turned into a 30-minute conversation about marketing. And I remember one thing he said is, know your unique selling points.
Yep.
And if you don't know that, you need to go back and reevaluate.
It's really important. And I remember that conversation because it was like, I think it was one of the first times that we actually talked.
Yeah.
Because we sit by each other every now and then, but it's like, you're passing ships in the night. And that was the first time that we really communicated. And all of a sudden it was just like, bleh. We're talking marketing and all kind of stuff, which was great. I mean, like I told her, she's like, oh, I didn't mean to take up. And I was like, man, I could talk about this all day. I think I even said those exact words. But not just me, but anyone, just if you're open to learning, you're going to be a better person for it. And if you're a river, that information is going to flow through like to someone else. So it's going to stay with you longer, but you also become the teacher for other people. And so I think it's really important. And that's one of my favorite Maxwell principles. I say that probably in every one of my talks that I have. If I'm coaching anyone, I tell them the same thing. I was asked to speak at a master's level course for a course in Hawaii. And so obviously it was on Zoom. I wish I was in Hawaii for that. But we had about 10 students, and they're all master's levels. And man, they went on. They asked questions galore, and it was all about just business and leadership and marketing. But it was that. And I told them, I was like, the last thing, guys, don't take what I'm saying here and what we're learning here and keep it to yourself. You got to put that out in the world, for your kids or your coworkers or whatever. And everyone was really appreciative. And it's funny because 2 days ago, my friend who's the professor got evaluations from everyone for the year. And she actually said she sent me one of the evaluations, and one of the students said that one of the best classes was when I came and spoke. So it was, nice. I was like, yeah, this is all worth it. This is kind of cool.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That is really nice. So kind of just wrapping up everything.
Okay.
I want to thank Edward for coming in today and talking to us about leadership, business, a bunch of other things that we really had to talk about. Yeah, life in general. Can you tell our listeners where they can find you, social media, anything like that?
Yeah, so my handle on Instagram is official Edward Leos. now. You can go to my website at www.edwardleos.com. Pretty simple. Yeah, you can just pretty much Google me. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me there. I'm pretty big in social media just because of the fact that I teach social media. So
Yeah.
if you're not using it, that's probably not a good thing. But yeah,
So many
you could
resources.
there's a lot of resources. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So you can find me on Instagram, Facebook. I'm on TikTok, but that'll really.
So are we. We got some on there. So
Yeah, I don't, yeah. But
We
yeah,
got to get you on TikTok, make some videos.
I really. It's funny. We need to probably talk about that. Because I got some products that some of the things that I market and stuff like that, and TikTok's a big deal, and it is something. But I feel way old school, posting on TikTok. I'm like, yeah, you're doing the same thing you're doing on Instagram. That's not going to really work in TikTok. So yeah,
Yeah.
But at least I know my limitations.
Well, now if you practice them, there is some people out there really good.
No, oh heck yeah, heck yeah.
But yeah, thanks again for joining us. Once again, we're Peachtree Rose Marketing. This is While Supplies Last, the marketing podcast. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok at Peachtree Rose Marketing. And you can also go to our website, peachtreerosemarketing.com, if you want to set up a consultation with us.
Yeah. And thank you again, Edward. This was
Welcome.
a great talk. So many great things.
It was fun. Thank you for
Yes.
having me, and hopefully we can do this again soon.
Yes,
Yeah,
for
of
sure,
course.
for sure. Okay,
right.
yeah. All right, thank you.
You got it.
Bye.